A few months ago, I met up with a friend I've known since college. We studied computer science together. Same lectures, same late nights, same deadlines. He's been a programmer for almost 10 years now. Not a beginner. Not someone chasing hype. Not someone who just learned to code during lockdown. A real, experienced developer. The kind of person you assume will always be fine. And halfway through our conversation, he said something that completely changed how I think about this whole topic. He said, "I didn't lose my job, but I feel like my job disappeared." I laughed at first. I thought he was exaggerating. So I asked him what he meant. He opened his laptop and turned it toward me. On the screen was an AI coding assistant. He typed a short sentence. Not code. A sentence. Something like, build an API endpoint that validates user input, stores it in a database, and returns a response. He hit enter. The AI generated the code. He scrolled, reviewed it, changed a few things. Then he leaned back and said, "This used to take me an entire afternoon." That moment stuck with me. Not because it was scary, not because it felt like science fiction, but because it was quiet. No headlines, no layoffs, no dramatic announcements. Just a slow realization that the role he trained for was changing faster than anyone warned him. And that brings us to the question people keep asking now. Is coding dead? Depending on who you listen to, the answers are extreme. One side says, programming is over. AI will replace all developers. The other side says, this is just another tool. Nothing really changes. Both sides are wrong. The truth is more uncomfortable, because coding isn't disappearing, but it's being redefined. And that distinction matters more than most people realize. Yes, AI can write code, real code, production-level code, web applications, back-end services, automation scripts, data analysis pipelines. If you've used tools like GitHub Copilot, Cursor, or ChatGPT, you already know this. You describe what you want, you press enter, and code appears. Sometimes it's average, sometimes it's messy, but often it's good enough. And good enough is dangerous, because for decades, writing code was the job. If you knew the syntax, the frameworks, the patterns, you had value. That was the barrier to entry. AI just erased that barrier. It doesn't forget syntax. It doesn't get tired. It doesn't complain about boring tasks. Which leads to the first uncomfortable truth. Coding is not dead, but typing code as your primary value is dying. Those two things are not the same. Programming was never supposed to be about typing. It was about problem solving. But over time, the industry rewarded output. More commits, more tickets closed, more features shipped. Now AI does that part faster. So the question becomes, where do humans still matter? Here's something most people miss. Real programmers were never just people who write code. They were translators. They took messy human needs and turned them into structured systems. They decided, what should we build? What shouldn't we build? What happens when this scales? What breaks if this fails? What trade-offs are we accepting? AI doesn't understand intent. It doesn't understand business context, user psychology, office politics, long-term consequences. It generates answers, but it doesn't know which questions matter. That judgment is still human. And that's why senior developers aren't disappearing. But junior developers? They're getting squeezed. Traditionally, juniors learn through repetition. Simple tasks, bug fixes, routine features. That's how intuition was built. But those tasks are exactly what AI is best at. So companies quietly ask, why hire a junior to write basic code when AI can do it instantly, and a senior can review it? That's why entry-level roles feel like they're vanishing. Not because beginners are useless, but because the ladder itself is changing. Programming isn't disappearing. The apprenticeship model is, and nobody prepared people for that. Here's another truth people don't like hearing. AI didn't just change coding. It changed leverage. One developer with AI today can do what a small team did a few years ago. Build faster, test ideas quicker, refactor entire systems. That means fewer developers are needed per project. Yes, that does mean fewer jobs. Technology doesn't remove value evenly. It concentrates it. Average output loses value. Exceptional judgment gains it. So when people ask, is coding dead? The real answer is this. Coding as a mechanical task is dying. Programming as thinking is becoming more valuable than ever. But that requires a mindset shift. Instead of asking, how do I write this code? Developers now ask, is this the right solution? What's the simplest version? What happens if this breaks? What does the business actually need? AI becomes the accelerator. You're still the driver. And here's something AI is terrible at: owning decisions. When AI writes bad code, it doesn't get blamed. You do. When an AI-generated system fails, it's not the AI explaining it to leadership. You are. Responsibility didn't disappear. It became more visible. That's why judgment matters more than syntax now. This also explains why memorization is losing value. In the past, information was power. If you knew something others didn't, you were valuable. Today, I can explain. Algorithms, system design, frameworks, best practices, in seconds. Knowledge has become cheap. But what hasn't become cheap? Judgment, creativity, decision-making, problem framing. The value shifted from knowing to doing the right thing. This is where many programmers feel lost. They learned how to code, but they weren't taught how to think like builders. They weren't taught how to evaluate trade-offs. AI exposes that gap instantly. You can't hide behind syntax anymore. You can't fake understanding by copying code. The market now rewards clarity. If you're learning programming today, this matters deeply. Don't stop learning code, but don't learn it the old way. Memorizing syntax is low leverage. Fighting AI is wasted energy. The real skill is learning how to work with it, knowing how to prompt it, knowing when to trust it, knowing when to override it, knowing how to validate results. AI is now part of the stack. The developers who treat it like cheating will fall behind. The ones who treat it like leverage will move faster than ever. And here's the quiet truth nobody says out loud. AI didn't make programming harder. It made it more honest. You either understand systems or you don't. You either create impact or you don't. There's no hiding anymore. So no, coding isn't dead. But coding as a standalone skill is. The future belongs to people who can think, decide, and adapt, with AI as an amplifier. If you're willing to grow into that role, you're not late. You're early. But if you're clinging to the old version of the job, that's where the real risk is. This isn't the end of programming. It's the end of pretending typing was the point. That's programming after AI. And that's the conversation we'll keep having here. See you in the next one.